And hi, everyone. Welcome back to Inside the Game. CC and the Zolz, Charlie Carnaccio, Rick Zolzer. With football season behind us, we now turn our attention to pitchers and catchers. We'll talk a little Mets and Yankees, as well as a new venture for Alex Rodriguez and some basketball, feuding on and off the court. Let's start with that. Former New York Knick Charles Oakley, banned from Madison Square Garden by James Dolan.
Well, let's tell the whole story. First, I am a lifelong Knicks fan. The only time I didn't root for the Knicks is when I was the PA announcer for the New Jersey Nets, and I got to see Jason Kidd play every night. And in those days, if you remember those Knicks, that was the thug Knicks with Sprewell, and they were an embarrassing team to root for anyway. So, a lifelong Knicks fan. I've watched the ups and downs and the different styles of basketball, going all the way back to Red Holtzman, hit the open man, to Pat Riley, to literally hit the open man. And this was, I think, the second most embarrassing moment in Knicks history. The first one was Van Gundy dry humping Alonzo Mourning's leg in the playoff, if you remember that. Hopefully you'll have a shot of that, because that's just the worst moment ever. But here's Charles Oakley, who was a hard-nosed, borderline dirty player who did all the dirty work for the Knicks. And the crowd loved him for always giving an effort. And James Dolan, who I think is probably one of the most hated owners ever for a New York franchise. Also think he's the worst owner ever in New York franchise. He can't mess up the Rangers because he lets Sather do what he does, because Sather knows what he's doing. He's had a pretty decent history in winning in the NHL. So he leaves the Rangers alone, but he always is picking at the Knicks, sits right underneath their basket. And Oakley has been trying to talk to him for years. And he's too big. Please, I'm James Dolan, and you're just Charles Oakley, the guy that they pay to come see. And Oakley bought a ticket right behind him and started giving him an earful. And Dolan wouldn't even turn around and look at him until security arrived. And now my impression of the video is that first the security guys put their hands on Oakley, and Oakley is a prideful man in his building. And he's like, "Get your hands off me." And when they wouldn't, he slapped them away, and the guy grabbed him. He did the finger point to the forehead. Oakley probably overreacted, but I have to understand the mind of a professional athlete at that level. Don't disrespect me. That's the biggest thing any pro athlete in any sport has. Don't disrespect me.
And they'll carry that throughout their lives, because he's 53 now.
It never stops.
Right.
Never stops. So he actually gets taken down in the tunnel, gets arrested, gets thrown in jail. James Dolan then has the Knick PR machine generate a scorched earthing, and that actually says he might be an alcoholic. Coming from a drug addict like him, he's calling Oakley an alcoholic. Here's what people should know. Do you remember Jason Williams?
Yeah.
The guy who tried to cover up the shooting death of his limo driver? He's had nothing but problems since that one evening. Oakley has multiple times driven to Florida or flown to Florida when Williams is having a bad time, just to hang out with him so he doesn't drink, so he doesn't do drugs. Oakley may drink a few beers, but I doubt he's an alcoholic. But that's James Dolan. They just said it's a fantasy. Whatever he says, it's nonsense. Right. Then Dolan has the nerve to have Latrell Sprewell, probably one of the worst human beings ever to put on a Knick uniform, for a photo op next to him. And he also, Larry Johnson was there, and Bernard King was there, and it was an unscheduled old-timers day at the Garden, because James Dolan wanted to show how the players love him. Yeah. I guarantee you there was a payment involved in an appearance fee to those guys, because I have a picture on my Facebook page, and you can steal it so you can show it, of James Dolan just sitting there like a kid who's just about to throw up, with the Knicks sitting around going, "Oh my God, I'm hanging out with this stupid white man." So all of that comes to fruition. It gets uglier and uglier, and Adam Silver, who I think is the best commissioner in sports, says, "You know what? Both of you right now to the principal's office." He gets him into the NBA office and has Michael Jordan on the line, because he knows that Oakley respects Jordan. James Dolan doesn't give a crap about Jordan, because Jordan was in the way of the Knicks winning championships for quite a while. And they go back and forth, and they come up with the following scenario. They're on the same page, and Oakley can come back to the Garden. But Oakley said, A, he wants a press conference, and B, at that press conference, he wants Dolan to apologize to him for the way he was treated and to the fans. I agree, but it'll never happen. Yeah. That arrogant little Napoleon jerk will never do that. Dolan absolutely will never do that, because then he's admitting he was wrong in the first place, and he'll never do that.
He's worth $1.5 billion.
Daddy is worth that, and gave him the Garden.
Well, yeah.
That was his Christmas present. Most people get trains. He got the Knicks and Rangers in Madison Square Garden.
And meanwhile, Oakley, he's an owner of a couple of car washes. He's got one in Yonkers, in Central Avenue.
Yeah, he's a great guy. he is a tough guy and he is a moody guy. And like many who played that position, don't ever disrespect me then, now, or ever. And I thought he held his own against 8 security guards until the real cops showed up, and then it got bad. And then if you remember correctly, Dolan then fired his vice president of security right after that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he fired the vice president of security, right? A guy who lives around here somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Just a joke. The Knicks have become a joke, and it's all because of one short little man who likes to throw stones at others. They will never move forward until that guy sells the team. Yeah. I think they're worse off than the Mets are with their ownership group.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will agree with that. All right, let's move on to Durant and Westbrook.
I don't know if you saw it, but I was shocked at how much hype, first of all, was made over Kevin Durant going back to Oklahoma City. It's a regular game, but normally when a guy who's had a lot of success in a market comes back, they do the video presentation and it's the flowers and the hugs and the kisses. Dude, they completely eviscerated him. They booed him. They wore cupcake shirts and they said he's soft and all that kind of stuff. And here's the truth. If you know anything about the NBA, Kevin Durant was the best player on that team, even with Michael Westbrook. Westbrook is very successful now with his triple-doubles and stuff because Durant's not there. Everybody else on that team, other than him, are quite a bit below him in skill level. But if you ever watch their games in the playoffs, you would watch 5 or 6 possessions when they played a certain amount of team basketball, and then Westbrook would get mad that he didn't have a shot or wasn't involved, and he would do something stupid constantly. Because I watch a lot of NBA. I know that Westbrook is a wonderful talent with a 5-cent head. He's not a bad guy. He's not going to get arrested and stuff like that. But it's his team, even when Kevin Durant there, and anyone who knows NBA knows it was not his team. Durant was in his rights to go get free agent money and go somewhere else. Why is that wrong? Is there anybody who sat in that crowd who really treated him poorly that night? You know, they're flipping burgers at McDonald's and Burger King calls and says, we'll give you twice what McDonald's is paying you if you leave McDonald's. Everybody's going to take that offer.
Well, he wanted the team to progress, and they weren't
progressing because of Westbrook. Right. So I was shocked, and he was so good-natured about it, and he played it off, and that's the end of that. But I was a Midwestern city, I am amazed at how badly they treated the guy who put them on the map. Westbrook did not put them on the map. He helped him, but he should have got the video and the thank you, and he got booed and made fun of the entire time. Yeah. And by the way, they won by a lot, and he had like 30 points, 15 rebounds. I mean, he dominated the game to show the fans, here's what you're missing because of that guy.
Yeah, right, yeah. I mean, and Westbrook is playing much better now. I mean, he was averaging 22 points a game. Now he's up to 30. So he's playing.
He's averaging a triple-double.
He's playing much better, but the team is still going nowhere.
Because you can't win in the NBA without a complimentary star. Yeah. You can have 4 or 5. You can have a bunch of Bill Wenningtons and Steve Kerrs, but you still need the Scottie Pippen to go with Michael Jordan. Yeah. You know, you need to have that other piece, and they don't have it. There's lots of pieces in Golden State, in all fairness. Yeah. That's a scary team, but somehow. Never undersell LeBron. He has that Michael Jordan will to win games that you don't think he's gonna, which is what he did in the NBA Finals.
So Golden State, as we're taping this, is 46-9, and conversely, your Nets are 9-46.
They are not my Nets. As soon as Jason Kidd left the Nets, I had already been fired, but he was there, I think, 2 or 3 more seasons. And I stopped liking the Nets, and then they're an embarrassment on the court. The Knicks are the embarrassment off the court. Yeah. It's just between Phil and Carmelo, Dolan and Oakley, and yet they fill that building every night. Yeah. Every night, no matter how bad they are, that is a sellout crowd.
Well, it's where it is too, you know.
It's a place to be.
Location where it is. What a great gig you had though when you were a PA announcer for them.
Dude, I sat here and the NBA was there. I was at center court to watch.
For a guy who's such a fan of the game, I mean, how much better can you get?
And an ex-point guard who got to see the best point guard ever for 3 full seasons do things that made me sometimes go, oh, basketball. like I would overreact because it was Jason Kidd, and I would have to calm down and go, that basketball, Jason Kidd. It was awesome.
All right, that takes us to halftime. You're watching Inside the Game with CC and the Zolz. We will be back right after this.
Our Valley is our community. When you need professional local news, go to the source that is your go-to news source. We are the pioneers of digital media in the Hudson Valley. HVNN.com. Anywhere, anytime. It's your local news source. Online.
And welcome back to Inside the Game with CC and Zolz, Charlie Carnaccio, Rick Zolzer. Let's get into some baseball talk. Spring training right around the corner. The Yankees, better than a 500 team this year?
Well, they have questions, and we'll go over some of those question marks. But youth will be served more so than last year. They went out and they got Chapman back, which means if you're going to spend that kind of money on a closer, that means you expect to win some games. They're not going to beat the Red Sox for the division championship, but I do think they'll be in the discussion all year long as some of their question marks come to fruition first. Let's talk about Gary Sanchez. That's probably one of the most exciting young players I've seen. Like, if I go back, I think him, I think of Puig when he first come up, I think of Kevin Moss,
oh boy,
and I think of Shane Spencer. Yeah. Guys who come on the scene and are like hot. Pitchers can't get him out, and then what happens more often than not? Yeah. Now, Sanchez defensively is a good catcher and has a rocket for an arm. So he has the skill set where the hitting is not as important because, as you know, it's always great to have the catcher that hits, but it's one of the positions on the field where you can have someone that doesn't have to be an offensive threat. Do I think this guy's going to have the same pace? He had 20 homers and 42 RBIs in 53 games. It is the greatest history in the start of Major League Baseball. No one has ever had that kind of success, and I guess it would be 59 homers and 124 RBIs over a regular season. Do I think he's going to put up numbers like that? Absolutely not. The Yankees don't think he's going to put up numbers like that. He doesn't think he's going to put up numbers. Here's what you should expect from that guy. A good defender who will throw out runners, who will be in that 20 to 25 home run range. He'll hit maybe 280, and he'll knock in 80 runs. If a good defensive catcher does that, you've just hit the lottery. Yeah. And I think they have with this kid. Then you look at their pitching staff. Tanaka, I think, is one bad injury away from being out of baseball for a year to get Tommy John. Pineda, who is wildly inconsistent. He looks literally like Bob Gibson one day and Sarah Gibson the next day, which is ridiculous. CC Sabathia, who pretty much ate himself out of the game, has lost a lot of weight and is coming to spring training in pretty good shape. And then the number 4 in spots, you got guys like Severino, who did really well 2 years ago, then came up last year. I think he was like 0-8, 0-8 with an 8.5 ERA. They put him back to AAA. Then they've got Sessa and Green and Warren. So they got a lot of other pieces to fight for those 4 and 5 spots. So the Yankees are going to win a lot of games. But the difference is going to be, what do they do with someone like Greg Bird? Remember when he came up the first year? Everybody goes, oh my God, here's our guy at first base for the next 15 seasons. Then he gets hurt last year before spring training, and he can't go north with the ball club, so they have to find things. Will he be that guy? Will Aaron Judge be the guy that everybody thinks he's going to be, as opposed to the guy who had 200 with a couple of home runs last year where he looked confused most of the time? And finally, I can't think of a bigger free agent bust in recent memory than Jacoby Ellsbury. Here's a guy who dominated as a Red Sox, and he's really not only done much as a Yankee, but he hasn't been on the field a lot. He's constantly injured. He's made a marzipan. You wonder if he's ever going to play on a given basis. But he's one of those guys we say, you know what, if he can be even 3/4 of what he was, you add him with the offense that they have, that Chris Carter, who's going to hit a lot of home runs, he's going to run into 25 fastballs every year. He's going to only play against left-handed pitching. And the Yankees can be good. They could probably, I'm going to say, 84 wins, 85, 86 wins in that neighborhood.
That's what they had last year, 86.
Yeah, so they're going to be in that same neighborhood. They'll be in a discussion. And if they're not, I guarantee you they will trade Chapman again to a contender. And then they'll get Chapman for the 1 year, and then he's going to come right back because he loves New York, and the Yankees will get a bunch of prospects for him.
Yeah. All right. New York Mets. Let's talk about them and this whole injury bug from last year. It seems like it's carrying over into this year. How are they going to get by that?
Well, the pitchers and catchers got to spring training for the Mets. Some of them were there last week. Everybody showed up a couple of days ago, and I think their first workout is today when you show this, which would be Friday. The main guys, Syndergaard looks ready to go. DeGrom looks ready to go after his injury. Steven Matz, They say he will be ready to go, but nobody's too sure about him yet. Zach Wheeler, remember how good Zach Wheeler was 2 years ago? Then he had the surgery. Now he's going to come back probably June-ish or July-ish. That's almost like getting a great pitcher in a trade when all of a sudden he shows up. Gesselman pitched incredibly well when they brought him up from the minors. So there's another. They have more young pitching than I've ever seen, including those Atlanta Brave teams back in the day.
Oh, yeah. And what about David Wright? Let's get into that.
Well, when you consider what his injuries are, I want to get the exact. It's a spinal stenosis. That is not a pulled hamstring. Right. And for a guy who third base, if you have to break down and make a picture of your third baseman, they have to have quick reactions laterally. They spend more time on the ground diving for stuff than they do on a shortstop can get to a ball, field it cleanly, and throw it. Third basemen are diving in both directions. And then the actual torque of swinging a baseball bat. How will that affect David Wright? There's no one on the Mets I pull more for than David Wright. Mm-hmm. He is the face and has been the face through some bad times. You hope that he can have a good season. But listen, bringing Reyes back last year, Reyes is not only going to spell David Wright at third base, he's going to spell shortstop and second base because they want him in the lineup because he's such a good leadoff hitter. Yeah. Outfield-wise, the guy in left now has a big contract. Will Cespedes be happy and less hungry, which he's been fighting for contract his last couple of years? Or will he just relax and be the guy who they said ungodly potential, but he's never going to live up to it? Jay Bruce, he's the modern day Ed Whitson. He doesn't seem to be able to play in New York. He doesn't like the bright lights. He doesn't like being covered literally by 15 dailies every single day. He doesn't like the pressure. He's a guy, if you look on the back of his baseball card, that has the ability to hit 40 home runs a year. But I don't know if he's ever going to do it in New York, and they tried to trade him, and nobody wants the guy. I mean, they literally took in a low-level prospect for him. Nobody wants him and his big contract. So they came out and said, oh, he's our everyday outfielder. We're behind him 100%. Yeah, because you couldn't trade him.
Yeah, and that says something because that means there's something in his stats, there's something in his swing, there's something in his mechanics that everyone sees because it's not just the fact that take him out of New York and he'll be fine.
So now you've got the starting pitching, which is very good. You got the bullpen to get to the closer, which is very good. Yeah, they made some real good acquisitions. But Familia, you know what? I don't know how good he is. He's blown it in the World Series and in playoff games. He has that domestic violence thing against him where they think he's going to be suspended for the first 30 days of the season, which really isn't much when April. Pennant's not going to be decided in April. But is his head ready to be a closer in the major leagues? Yes, he's got filthy stuff, but that doesn't matter if you're still carrying your walk-off home run from the night before and you haven't erased it. That was one of Mariano's biggest traits. Yeah. When he got roughed up on Wednesday, he didn't even remember Tuesday.
Short memory.
Yeah, and he had a couple of pretty big flame outs in important games, like the catcher from Cleveland who hit the opposite field home run when the Cleveland Indians came back and beat him. That little broken bat single with the infield in Arizona against Mariano. Can't remember. Gonzalez got that hit. I don't know if Familia has the makeup, but he sure does have the stuff. Yeah. But I still say the Mets, that's a 91-win team. Yeah, okay. 91, 92 wins.
All right. That'll take us to overtime. And when we come back after the short break, Alex Rodriguez with a new career. We'll see.
Our Valley is our community. When you need professional local news, go to the source that is your go-to news source. We are the pioneers of digital media in the Hudson Valley. HVNN.com. Anywhere, anytime. It's your local news source. Online.
And welcome back to Inside the Game. We are now at the overtime period where we talk about the business of sports. And let's talk about the business of Alex Rodriguez in the booth and potentially on the TV screen.
Well, if you've watched the playoffs, the biggest star was Alex Rodriguez on the pre- and post-game sets. He was unbelievable. I know a lot of Yankee fans still hate the guy, which I've never understood. Yes, he does and says some stupid things, but he was by far the best player and the best option the Yankees had at that time in his career. He lit up the TV screen. He's good looking. He's smart. He's well spoken. He was the absolute antithesis of Pete Rose, who was a train wreck. But you watch, because what is Pete Rose going to say next?
Right, yeah.
I mean, he said stuff that made me look intelligent. I mean, he was just out of his mind. But A-Rod was able to be calm. He knew his numbers. He knew his stats. He was absolutely on point. And I remember I said on the air when I did the Sports in the Morning, I said, that TV star somewhere. Well, CNBC is giving him an opportunity. He's going to put together a show. I want to make sure I get the name right. Where back in the game, where he's going to visit with ex-baseball players who have lost fortunes, and there's a lot of them. Yes. Where their money has been mismanaged, they've had different addictions, and they've spent their money, whatever the case may be. And the show is going to center around A-Rod and CNBC providing financial experts, life coaches, lawyers to get them out of debt, all of those things to change the negative down spiral that has become this athlete. And all these guys are going to put them back together and get him back to becoming a prominent player in society again. And A-Rod is going to be the guy, I guess, like Jeff Probst, who's going to go from segment to segment. He's going to be the guy to be the transition kind of thing. And I think it's going to excel. I'm upset it's only on CNBC, because I would watch it if it was on Fox.
Yeah, it might have some legs because of and he'll come out like the hero, like he's doing all the stuff for these people, which is great. There was a show called Back in the Game, 2013 on ABC, I think it was. It was a sitcom. It's called Back in the Game. James Caan was like the old grumpy guy, and
which he plays well.
And his daughter lost her job or whatever. Her son didn't make the Little League team, so she took over the team, but she didn't know how to coach. So he came in to coach, and he was calling the kids fat and lazy, and you suck. And he was, but it only lasted.
It's Bad News Bears.
It's Bad News Bears, yeah. But it only lasted one season. I think they scheduled 13 episodes. They canceled it after 10. It was in 2013. But anyway, same name. I guess they're allowed to do that.
Let's hope for different results.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But listen, A-Rod's a star, and A-Rod's going to make a lot of money in television. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to see from this guy. And again, a guy who went from villain, and then people loved him again at the Yankee Stadium, and now he became the guy that primed the pump for the youth movement, and he still says he might play. Right now, he's in spring training as an instructor.
Like the Larry Holmes.
Larry Holmes won some big fights when he was like 108.
I know, but these guys just don't know when to retire. They're not good at retirement.
I would pay to see A-Rod hit again. No doubt about it. I would pay to see that.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean,
Dude, listen, when I was with the Nets, there's a guy who came and played for the Washington Wizards who was 107 years old, Michael Jordan, and he could still flat out play as a Wizard. People go, it's hurting his legacy. What? Hurting his legacy? He don't have enough hands for the rings.
Yeah.
This is stupid. I would absolutely pay to see A-Rod play again. I don't think it's ever going to happen, because Miami was the only place where he may have gone. But listen, he's got a whole new career, and he's going to be very successful.
All right, so there's the question for you. Do you think Alex Rodriguez should come back and should try and hit again, or do you think he should just go into retirement and take on these extra projects that he's got? That's the question for you. We're looking for your comments, suggestions for the show. You can go down to the bottom of the screen and enter your comment there. If there's any topics you'd like us to discuss on the show, put them there, and we'll be sure to get them and see if we can kind of incorporate them in the show. You're watching Inside the Game with CC and the Zolz, Charlie Carnaccio, Rick Zolzer. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends, and we'll see you next time.